The photos said I cheated, but the truth was far more twisted. Karen Roland's office wasn't flashy. The walls were lined with mismatched bookshelves, half stacked with case files and dog-eared legal volumes. A scarred oak desk sat by the window, framed by lazy beams of late-morning sunlight filtering through sheer white curtains. A faint aroma of French roast drifted in the air. It was peaceful until her landline rang. She glanced at the display. Unknown number. Karen's instincts, finally honed from over a decade as a private investigator, gave a subtle nudge. Unknown numbers often meant someone desperate or dangerous. Roland Investigations, she said smoothly, one hand reaching for a pen, the other flipping open her notebook. There was a pause, no background noise, no voice. Then a woman spoke, her tone soft and tentative. "Hello, Miss Roland? I hope I'm not calling too early." Karen leaned back in her chair. "Not at all. How can I help you?" "My name is Naine French. Mrs. Keeney, you solved her cousin's case, the one about the missing will? She told me to call you. She said you're discreet and effective." Karen smiled faintly. Word-of-mouth cases were always the most sincere. "That's kind of her. What's going on, Miss French?" There was a shaky breath. "It's complicated. Actually, there are two situations, both personal, but I don't think I can explain them properly over the phone." Karen's pencil froze mid-circle on the edge of her notepad. "Two situations? Personal?" "Okay," she said, sitting up straighter. "When and where would you like to meet?" "Naine hesitated. Today, if possible. Somewhere private." Karen tapped her calendar. "I'm free at 2. There's a little cafe on Hawthorne and 34th. Quiet, corner booth. I'll be there." "Thank you," Naine whispered. I really need someone to believe me." When she hung up, Karen stared at the phone a beat longer than usual. Naine French. The name meant nothing. But that voice, there was panic behind it. Panic covered in a thin layer of self-restraint. It was the kind of voice people used when their world had just collapsed, and they were still pretending everything could be salvaged. Karen stood, stretched, and glanced at the whiteboard across the room. A dozen open cases loomed in messy handwriting, but something told her today would add a new one that would worm its way in her head and keep her awake at night. 1:55 p.m. Lavender Moon Cafe. Naine was already there when Karen walked in, seated in the far corner near the window. She looked nothing like what Karen had imagined. She wasn't fragile or disheveled. She was poised. Her hair was the color of autumn leaves, flowing neatly past her shoulders. She wore a navy blue dress and minimal makeup, but her posture betrayed tension. One foot jittered softly under the table. Her hands twisted the napkin in her lap with surgical precision. Karen approached. "Naine." The woman stood quickly, extending a hand. "Miss Roland, thank you for meeting me." "Call me Karen," she said, shaking her hand and noting the grip, nervous but not weak. Karen ordered a black coffee and returned to the table. "Okay, you said there were two situations. Let's start with the first." Naine swallowed hard. "My husband, Peter, he served me divorce papers 2 nights ago, completely out of the blue." Karen raised an eyebrow. "No warning signs?" "We had our struggles. What couple doesn't? But this? No, nothing could have prepared me." "Why is he leaving?" Naine looked down. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He thinks I cheated on him." Karen blinked. "Did you?" "No." Her voice cracked. Heads turned briefly before she lowered her eyes and whispered again. "No, I didn't. But there are photos." She reached in her leather tote and pulled out an envelope. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed it on the table and slid it across. Karen opened it and slowly examined the contents. 3 photos, 2 of them grainy but graphic, a red-haired woman in bed with a man. The third was clearer. Naine, or someone who looked exactly like her, standing in front of a hotel room with the same man from the other 2 pictures. Karen narrowed her eyes. "This does look like you." Naine nodded. "I know, but I swear it isn't. The woman in those photos has a small parrot tattoo on her shoulder. I don't." Karen studied the image again. She zoomed in with her phone's camera and enhanced the contrast. The parrot was there, barely visible, but it was a detail. A crucial one. Your husband. Did you point this out to him? He didn't care. He was crushed. The photos came in the mail with a note. Keep your wife away from my husband. Karen sat back, digesting that. So this was sent to him anonymously. Naine nodded. He said he didn't want to surprise me with legal papers on Monday. He handed me a copy of the divorce in person. Said he just needed closure. Karen frowned. And you're certain you've never been in that hotel room? I was staying at a hotel in Phoenix that week. I left my room Tuesday morning and a man stopped me in the hallway, said I dropped a pen. I told him it wasn't mine and walked away. Karen leaned forward. That's him, the man in the photo? Naine nodded slowly. Yes. I didn't even know who he was until I saw these. Karen set the envelope down. And the second situation? Naine hesitated, then said quietly, my job. It disappeared. I've been working remotely for a company called SIC, Service Industry Consultants. But when I went to the office yesterday, it was gone. Empty. No furniture. No people. Just vanished. Karen didn't flinch, but her brain clicked into high gear. How long have you worked for them? 3 months. I never questioned anything. I needed the money. The job seemed legit. Direct deposit. Email assignments. Travel expenses reimbursed. But now nothing. The website is gone too. I called every number I had. Dead ends. Karen folded her arms. You think the job was part of the setup? I don't know what to think. But everything started going wrong the moment I accepted that job. Karen looked at the trembling young woman across the table and saw something familiar. The helpless fury of someone betrayed by the people they trusted most. She tapped her pen twice. Okay, Naine. I'll take the case. Naine's eyes widened. You will? Yes. And if someone set you up, we'll find out who. And why. For the first time that day, Naine smiled faintly. It was fragile, but full of hope. Karen returned the smile, her instincts burning like a lit fuse. This wasn't just some marital misunderstanding. This was something deeper. Someone wanted Naine destroyed, and Karen was going to find out who. The wind outside the cafe carried the scent of early spring rain, brushing against the windows like a whisper of things hidden. Inside, the corner booth was quiet save for the gentle clink of a spoon in Karen Roland's mug. Across from her, Naine French sat stiffly, clutching a manila envelope like it contained a live wire. Her red hair, brilliantly auburn under the cafe lights, framed a face torn between anger and devastation. Karen watched her carefully. Whenever you're ready, she said gently. Naine took a trembling breath, opened the envelope, and slid 3 photographs onto the table between them. Karen leaned in, her detective instincts already swirling. 2 of the photos were taken inside a dimly lit hotel room. They were explicit, 2 people in bed, limbs tangled in the unmistakable chaos of sex. The third photo was less lurid but somehow worse. It showed Naine, or someone who looked exactly like her, standing outside a hotel room door next to a tall man in a charcoal suit. His face was turned away from the camera, but the red-haired woman's was unmistakable. Karen narrowed her eyes. Is that supposed to be you? Naine didn't hesitate. No, it's not. It looks like me, I know. But I swear to you, Karen, I've never seen that man in my life. Not in that way. Karen tapped the third photo. This one. I remember him, Naine admitted. But I didn't sleep with him. I didn't touch him. He stopped me in the hallway. Said I dropped something. Her voice quivered. It was a pen. A very expensive-looking one. I told him it wasn't mine, and he smiled and walked off. That was it. 2 minutes tops. Karen pulled the photos closer, adjusting the angle to avoid the reflection of the overhead lights. She scrutinized every detail, from the grain of the cheap hotel bedding to the blur of the wall art in the background. Then, she zeroed in on the woman's shoulder in the bedroom photos. A tiny tattoo, a parrot in mid-flight, green and red wings spread wide. Karen looked up. Do you have a tattoo? Naine blinked. No, never. Karen pointed to the mark. Well, she does. Naine leaned in, gasped, and slumped back in her chair. I didn't notice. I was too focused on the fact that the face wasn't visible. Her earrings, Karen continued, are identical to yours. They were a gift. From Peter. Last Christmas. Karen studied her again. Her earrings today were different. Modest, simple studs. But the woman in the photo wore dangling gold drops with a sapphire center. The same style, Karen noted, that Naine wore in a holiday photo with Peter on his social media. One that had been liked over 400 times. I only wear them when I'm dressed up, Naine said, her voice barely a whisper. It's why I recognize them right away. But this woman, she swallowed. She's not me. She just looks like me. Karen's eyes flicked back to the photographs. The resemblance was stunning. The same bone structure. The same curve to the jawline. Same posture. Same hair, dyed or not. It was styled in a nearly identical way. The staging of the photos wasn't just coincidental. It was deliberate. And expensive. She looked at Naine again. Your husband gave you these? Yes. On Wednesday night. I had just gotten back from Phoenix, another business trip. He was waiting for me at the door with them and a manila envelope containing divorce papers. Karen tapped the edge of the photo with a fingernail. And how'd he say he got them? Naine pulled a folded note from her purse. Karen opened it. The message was typed in all caps. Keep your wife away from my husband. No signature, no trace, just cold, calculated malice. He said the man's wife sent the photos, Naine said. He believed it, every word. He looked at me like I was something filthy. Karen sat back in her chair, slowly processing the pieces. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a carefully constructed lie. There was intent behind it, malicious, methodical intent. Let's go back, Karen said. When exactly did this man stop you in the hallway? Tuesday morning, Naine replied. Just before I left to do my inspections. He caught me just as I shut the door. Karen's mind was already racing. And you're sure he never entered the room? 100%. I had my coat on. My bach on my haunt. I never opened the door again after he walked away. Karen nodded slowly. They needed that hallway photo to sell the lie. The others wouldn't hold up without it. And from the angle of this one, she traced the perspective. It was taken from the other side of the atrium. Someone in the opposite room. High-quality zoom lens. Probably mounted. Naine stared at her, pale and wide-eyed. Someone staged this, Karen said. They found a woman who could pass as you, dressed her like you, put her in a room that looked like yours, probably was yours, and then made sure to catch you talking to the same man. That's the anchor photo, the one that makes the others real. Tears filled Naine's eyes. Why would someone do this to me? Karen's voice turned cold, clipped. We're going to find out. She opened her notebook. And you said this was just one of two strange situations? Naine nodded, blinking back the tears. The second one's worse. I don't think I ever had a real job to begin with. Karen's pen froze mid-stroke. Naine whispered, I think everything, the job, the travel, even the company, it was all fake. And I walked right into it. Naine sat across from Karen at the cafe table, her cup of tea untouched, both hands trembling slightly as she clutched the envelope that had detonated her life just 48 hours ago. Outside, the world bustled as if nothing had happened. Sunlight glinting off shop windows, the soft hiss of passing tires on the street. But inside Naine's mind, everything was unraveling. Karen leaned forward, elbows on the table, her detective's intuition already humming beneath her calm demeanor. Let's go back to when this all started. The job. Tell me everything. Naine inhaled deeply, then exhaled, forcing herself to speak in a steady rhythm. It started 6 months ago. I had just lost my job as a waitress when the restaurant shut down due to COVID. I was panicking. We just started looking for a house, had finally saved enough for a down payment. And then out of the blue, I got a call. Karen raised a brow. From a woman named Dory Sims. She said she was with a company called Service Industry Consultants, or SIC for short. They were launching a post-pandemic research project, something to do with gathering data from restaurants across the western states. She told me my background in hospitality and customer service was a perfect fit. Karen tilted her head. Did you apply for this job? No. That's what's so strange. She said a headhunter referred me, someone from my old restaurant. But when I asked which manager, she got vague. Said it was confidential. Naine paused, biting her lip. I should have been more skeptical. But I was desperate. And the pay was better than anything I'd ever made, even with tips. Karen tapped her pen against her notebook, already scribbling thoughts in shorthand. So what did the job involve? I was supposed to travel to different restaurants, mostly upscale ones, but also some smaller places. My task was to assess how they were handling post-COVID sanitation protocols, customer service, compliance, things like that. I'd fill out digital forms after each visit, rate the experience, and submit a write-up. That's it. No team, no supervisor following up with you on the ground. Naine shook her head. Everything was remote. Dory sent my assignments every other Friday. Hotel reservations were made for me. My travel reimbursements were wired promptly. Everything seemed so professional at first. Karen leaned back slightly, considering. And this Dory Sims, you only spoke with her? Naine nodded. Always over email or phone. She had a faint British or Australian accent. Soft-spoken, precise. She handled everything. Karen's expression darkened. Did you ever visit the company's office? Only 3 times. The first was when I signed the paperwork and was given my company cards, just these little glossy things with my name and title on them. The other times were quick drop-ins to pick up a tablet and submit receipts. I never saw anyone but her. The office was just a room in a nondescript building in downtown Portland. No signs, no logos, just a locked door on the 3rd floor and a plaque that said Suite 306. Karen scribbled fast. In that office, what did you find when you went back after Peter gave you the photos? Naine's face hardened. It was empty, completely cleared out. I asked the property manager to unlock the door, told him I lost my key. Inside? Nothing. No desk. No paperwork. Not even a trash can. It was like no one had ever been there. Karen froze mid-sentence. No forwarding address? No record of who rented the office. He told me the lease was paid in cash, monthly, and that last payment was 3 weeks ago. A slow silence settled between them as Karen's mind turned over the implications. Everything pointed to a sophisticated scam, but with a specific, unsettling purpose. Did you ever meet any of your colleagues? Other field agents? Naine shook her head. There weren't any. Or if there were, I never saw them. Miss Sims told me I was their only West Coast field rep, that others would be hired soon. Karen frowned. And what about the website? Company profile? They had a website, sort of, just a single page with a mission statement and a contact form. It's gone now. When I tried to pull it up on my phone yesterday, nothing. Karen narrowed her eyes, tapping her fingers thoughtfully against the table. It sounds like the entire company was a facade, a front created for one purpose. Naine's voice cracked. To destroy my marriage? Karen didn't answer immediately. She looked down at the photos Naine had given her earlier. The woman in bed looked so much like her client, it was eerie. Same hair, same build, even the earrings. But something about the images still bothered her. Can I ask you something? Karen said. Of course. When you stayed in hotels for your assignments, what did you always keep next to the bed? Naine blinked in surprise. My pepper spray. Peter bought it for me. Made me promise to sleep with it nearby. Said he couldn't rest unless he knew I was protected. Karen pointed at the photo of the woman in bed. And do you see it there? Naine leaned over the table and stared. She shook her head slowly. No, it's not there. Karen nodded. That might be your first crack in the armor. We'll build from there. For the first time since she walked into the cafe, Naine let out a genuine breath. A tiny flicker of hope passed through her tear-rimmed eyes. Karen folded the photos and tucked them into her notebook. Naine, I don't think you were just collateral damage. I think someone orchestrated all of this. Your fake job, the actress, the photographs, all of it. Naine whispered, but who would go to that length and why? Karen looked her dead in the eye. That's what I'm going to find out. The next morning brought a steel-gray sky and the kind of damp chill that seemed to seep through Karen Roland's coat before she even left her front steps. Still, she didn't complain. Her mind was sharp, caffeinated, and focused. In this case, Naine French's case, was starting to itch under her skin like a buried splinter. She made her way downtown, opting to drive instead of ride her bike. Traffic was light. A drizzle smeared the windshield with a whispering rhythm as she pulled up in front of a two-story red brick office building on 7th Avenue. The address Naine had given her. Suite 204, Service Industry Consultants. Except the door read vacant. Nothing more. Karen pressed her palm flat against the frosted glass and peered inside. Empty. The office was completely gutted. Not a desk, not a coffee cup, not a paperclip left behind. No sign it had ever been a functioning workplace. Just whitewashed walls, old carpet depressions, and the ghost of a filing cabinet that once stood in the corner. She turned, scanning the corridor. A few neighboring office doors were open. Insurance brokers, tax preparers, and a boutique immigration lawyer. Karen knocked on the door marked Suite 206, Carson and Leary Accountants. An older woman in a brown cardigan and half-moon glasses answered. Hi there. I'm looking for the company that used to be in 204, Service Industry Consultants. The woman's eyes flicked toward the vacant suite, then back to Karen. They were here for a few months. Quiet folks. Just the one woman worked there. British, maybe Australian. Dory Sims. Could be. Didn't talk much. One day she just stopped showing up. A week later, a guy came and cleared the place out. Didn't even leave a card. Karen thanked her and stepped back into the hallway. Her gut churned. In all her years of detective work, she knew this for what it was, a clean vanish. Whoever had run this operation hadn't just packed up, they'd erased themselves. And people who erased themselves were usually paid to do it. Back at her office, Karen slipped into her chair and powered on her laptop. She poured herself a fresh cup of Sumatra roast and cracked her knuckles before diving into digital sleuthing mode. First up, the business registration databases. She pulled up state registries from Oregon, California, and Washington. Typed in Service Industry Consultants. Nothing. Tried SIC, same result. Then she searched LinkedIn for Dory Sims. The platform coughed up 4 profiles, none in hospitality or consulting, none in Portland. Not one with a job history that fit the timeline. Next, Aaron Smith. Dozens of hits, as expected. She filtered by location, company, keywords. Still nothing that pointed to hospitality, headhunting, or restaurant consulting. She leaned back, frowning. Smoke and mirrors, she muttered. Karen had seen fake companies before, usually as shells for money laundering, fraud, or corporate espionage. But this had all the hallmarks of something personal. Someone had put in a lot of effort and money to construct a fake reality for Naine. And just as carefully, they dismantled it the second their job was done. Why? She opened her notebook and jotted down what she knew. Naine was offered a too-good-to-be-true job, right after losing her waitressing position. The job involved frequent travel and low supervision. She was paid well, on time, via direct deposit. All communication was through a woman named Dory Sims. The office now doesn't exist. The company can't be traced. A fake, cheating setup was delivered right before Peter filed for divorce. Karen tapped her pen against the page, staring at the name, Peter French. She pulled up his LinkedIn profile. A polished, well-optimized profile of a young VP in product development at a high-growth firm called Hippolyte Systems. Good education, great references, several awards. There was also a name that stood out, Cynthia Marshall, the company's chief of strategy and Peter's direct superior. Karen's eyes narrowed. She clicked on Cynthia's profile. Ivy League alum. Dozens of articles and panels. A smiling photo. But as Karen scrolled, she found an interesting detail. Cynthia's last public event with Peter was 4 months ago. Then nothing. She searched media mentions, press releases. Eventually, she found a snippet buried in a conference recap. Marshall and French, the firm's golden duo, were expected to relocate to Boston for the East Coast expansion. That made Karen pause. Boston. The move Naine had said was canceled out of nowhere. So what if? What if Naine's presence was the obstacle? What if someone didn't want Peter to leave? What if Naine wasn't framed to hide a Real affair, but to create a fake one, so she'd be removed from the picture? Suddenly, a name popped into her inbox. Jules, her off-the-books digital contact who owed her more than a few favors. Got a ping from your search request. Domain for SIC was purchased anonymously, but the IP trail was sloppy. Want me to run a deeper trace? Karen smiled. Yes, Jules. Follow that ghost. She closed her notebook slowly and whispered to herself. Let's see who wanted Naine gone badly enough to burn down a company. And with that, the truth began clawing its way to the surface. The early morning fog still clung to the streets of Portland as Karen Roland sat at her study, a steaming cup of ginger tea cradled in one hand and Peter French's personnel file spread open in front of her. She had obtained the file through a friend in corporate security, Marla Chun, a contact who owed Karen a favor from a previous high-profile blackmail case. What Karen was staring at now, however, wasn't just a dry resume. It was the outline of a man whose life had suddenly risen in the ranks at Hippolyte, a top-tier tech firm known for its cutthroat culture and secretive leadership. Peter French had joined the company 4 years ago as a junior development analyst. Within 18 months, he had leapfrogged into a senior managerial position, a meteoric rise for someone with no Ivy League degree, no board connections, and a fairly standard work history. Too fast, Karen thought, tapping her pen against the table. His performance reviews were glowing, almost suspiciously so. Words like indispensable, loyal beyond expectation, and future executive material kept popping up in his file. But one name recurred in every promotion memo, always with a note of personal recommendation. Cynthia Marshall, the VP of Strategic Operations. Karen set her mug down. The name triggered a distant echo in her memory, an old newspaper headline from 2 years back. Cynthia Marshall, the Ice Queen of Innovation. The article was about her relentless management style, her refusal to take no for an answer, and her uncanny ability to bend situations and people to her will. Rumor had it she once had an entire team fired overnight for disagreeing with her rollout plan. One ex-employee described her as the kind of woman who lights a fire, blames someone else, then sells them the extinguisher. Karen leaned back in her chair, absorbing the implications. Peter's story didn't make sense unless someone powerful, was pulling strings behind the scenes. And that someone was likely Cynthia. But why? She stood, stretching her legs, and moved over to her corkboard. She had already tacked up photos of Naine, Peter, and the hotel snapshots. Now she added Cynthia's clipped corporate headshot beneath Peter's name, linking them with red thread. What if the target hadn't been Peter, but Naine? The idea made her stomach turn. She'd seen manipulation like this before, quiet, precise, and devastating. But rarely had she seen someone go so far as to fabricate an affair, dismantle a marriage, and vanish a whole company to get what they wanted. Karen needed more than suspicion. She needed a motive. She dug deeper, searching through archived emails, LinkedIn posts, and employee newsletters. The deeper she went, the clearer it became. Cynthia had not only mentored Peter, but personally shielded him from company politics. She got him placed on the firm's expansion team. She pulled strings to relocate him temporarily to San Francisco. And most recently, Karen discovered something that chilled her to the core. Peter had been offered a transfer to Hippolyte's Boston division, a promotion with relocation. The catch? He and Naine were supposed to move together. The timeline was damning. The job offer had come through 6 weeks ago. Naine was served divorce papers 10 days ago. The fake affair photos were taken 2 weeks ago. That couldn't be coincidence. Karen sat frozen, heart hammering in her chest. It wasn't just about Peter's rise through the company. Cynthia needed him to stay. She couldn't afford to lose her prized protege, not to another branch, not to another city, and certainly not to his wife. It wasn't about romance. It was about control. Karen stood, grabbed her coat, and headed out the door. There was one more person she needed to talk to, Eric Delgado, a former team lead at Hippolyte who had once been Peter's supervisor, until he was mysteriously fired. It was time to find out exactly how far Cynthia Marshall would go to keep Peter in her orbit and what price she was willing to make others pay. The shadows around Peter were growing darker by the hour, and Karen was ready to shine a light right through them. The deeper Karen Roland dug, the darker the shadows grew. For most people, a boss was just that, a manager, a superior, someone to answer to during the 9-to-5 grind. But Cynthia Marshall, Peter's boss at Hippolyte Technologies, didn't believe in limits. She didn't stop at deadlines or performance metrics. She extended her reach into loyalty, privacy, and, as Karen was beginning to suspect, personal relationships. Karen sat in her home office, blinds drawn, 2 laptops open. One showed a data feed from a burner email trace. The other flickered with images from a digital archive she'd paid a good sum to access. Her usual investigative swagger was replaced by a deep, thoughtful frown. Something didn't add up, yet everything screamed that Cynthia was the linchpin in this web of deception. She took a sip of her lukewarm coffee and opened the HR records of Hippolyte's leadership team, focusing on turnover. Most of the staff had average tenure, except one, Peter French. In 5 years, he had leapt from mid-level analyst to senior director of development. Promotions came fast and steadily, faster than others with more experience. And every single one came at Cynthia's recommendation. Karen picked up her burner phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in nearly 2 years. It rang 5 times before a groggy voice answered. "You calling me means either someone's dead or someone's rich. Which is it, Roland?" "Neither. Yet," she replied. "I need background on a corporate executive. You still got access to Whisperline." "Yeah, but it'll cost you." Karen smirked. "Bill me." 15 minutes later, her screen lit up with a confidential packet. Cynthia Marshall, age 46, MIT graduate, psychology minor, MBA from Yale. Known for being brilliant, ruthless, and overly invested in her employees' lives. Too invested. In the last decade, there were 3 internal complaints filed by employees about inappropriate emotional manipulation, none of which were ever formally pursued. Karen raised her eyebrows. "Of course not," she muttered. Cynthia had enough power to make those disappear. But what caught Karen's attention wasn't in the documents. It was in the metadata from a deleted LinkedIn connection. A woman named Ashley Stone, the same alias used by the red-haired actress seen in the Doctor Hotel photos, had briefly worked as a consultant for a PR firm Hippolyte had contracted 2 years ago. She wasn't in any company photos, no employment records, no tags, but the connection was there, and it had Cynthia's digital fingerprints all over it. Karen cross-checked Ashley's archived Instagram page. Most of it was wiped clean, except for one picture. A grainy snapshot at a wrap party in a dimly lit rooftop bar. Behind Ashley, blurry but unmistakable, stood Cynthia Marshall, sipping a martini. Bingo. Karen printed the photo, circled Cynthia's face, and pinned it to her corkboard beside a copy of Naine's fake cheating photos. She stood back, stared at the wall, and muttered, "You are a very bad woman, Cynthia." The picture might not have been enough to legally nail Cynthia, but it proved motive and proximity. She wasn't just an ambitious executive. She was a puppeteer, one who couldn't stand losing control. And Peter French? He wasn't just her employee. He was her pet project, her success story. And Naine? Naine was the loose thread that needed cutting. Kara made a mental note to keep an eye on Cynthia's financials. If she had paid off Ashley Stone, the money had to come from somewhere. Offshore accounts, shell companies, maybe even through firm reimbursements disguised as consulting fees. Whatever it was, Karen would find it. She always did. Her next move? Confrontation. But not with Cynthia. Not yet. She needed someone closer. Someone who had seen the strings moving but didn't understand the marionette show. Peter. If Cynthia was the queen on the board, Peter was the knight, powerful, loyal, and utterly blind to the strategy around him. Karen would need to awaken him gently, because if she played her hand too soon, the queen might burn the whole board. The woman in the photographs was Naine. At least, that's what everyone thought. Her husband, his friends, her own neighbors. Even she, in a moment of desperate doubt, had stared at the glossy printouts in Karen Roland's office and wondered if she'd gone insane, if there was some parallel version of herself who had committed these acts. But Karen wasn't the type to trust surface impressions. Her experience in the world of shadows and deception had taught her one thing above all: the truth rarely looks the way you expect it to. That morning, Karen sat in her home office with the photos laid out across her desk. Light from the window angled just right, casting a silver gleam across the glossy surface. She'd taken high-resolution scans of each image, feeding them into an advanced image enhancement software suite she had installed years ago when tracking a case involving forged passports. She zoomed in. The woman, this Naine look-alike, was positioned so her face was partially turned away. Her hair was identical, dark auburn with copper undertones, styled in a long braid. Her body type? A perfect match. The tattoo on shoulder? Close, too close. But as Karen rotated the image, enhanced the pixelation, and used depth analysis to compare small markers, freckles, moles, posture, something began to surface. This woman had a beauty spot on her right hip. Karen had seen Naine in a sleeveless dress when they first met. No such mark. And then there was the tattoo, a small parrot perched on a vine. Karen paused. She called Naine. "Hey," came a quiet voice on the other end, her tone weary but hopeful. "Any news?" "Odd question, Naine," Karen said. "But do you have a tattoo on your shoulder?" A pause. "No, never wanted one. My mom threatened to disown me if I ever did." Karen smiled faintly. "Well, the woman in those photos has one. Small parrot, green and red, right shoulder blade. It's faint but there." Naine was silent, and then, "That's not me." "I didn't think it was," Karen said. "Now let's find out who it is." Karen knew she couldn't go through conventional channels. If this was a frame job, someone had used professional means: lighting, composition, fake documents, and now, possibly, a body double. She called Jules. Officially, he was a freelance penetration tester. Unofficially, he was her go-to for all things off-the-books digital. "I need a ghost traced," Karen told him. "Name?" "No name yet. Just a face. I've got 3 high-res images I'll send you now. Give me 24 hours. Karen hung up and leaned back in her chair. Someone had gone to incredible lengths to mirror Naine, hiring a near-perfect double, fabricating evidence, staging photos. This wasn't just petty revenge or random cruelty. This was calculated. There was a reason. 21 hours later, Jules sent her a ping. Found her. Her name's Elena Voss. Actress/model/escort. Mostly underground work. Uses the alias Ashley Stone when doing impersonation gigs. Last seen doing a private shoot 2 months ago in a recording studio in Tacoma. Attached was a reel from a risque modeling agency, with Elena's face front and center. Karen nearly dropped her glass of wine. It was uncanny. Same bone structure, same hair color and eye shape, same smile. But now, in high definition and without the veils of secrecy, the differences jumped out. Subtle differences, yes, but they were there. The tilt of the eyes, the way she carried her weight, the slightly higher arch of her eyebrows. This was the woman in the photos. Not Naine. Karen reached out to the agency under the guise of a high-paying corporate client. Within hours, she had secured an email chain of invoices and contracts tied to Elena, who, notably, had recently signed an NDA for a discreet impersonation role labeled Corporate Lifestyle Scenario, Role, Wife. The booking? Done through a third party. The email? Encrypted, but Jules cracked the metadata. The IP address originated from inside Hippolyte Tech, specifically from the 19th floor. Naine's husband Peter worked on the 17th. Karen's pulse quickened. "Who's on the 19th floor?" she whispered to herself. She pulled up the org chart of Hippolyte Tech Department, Executive Strategy. Office 1903. Cynthia Marshall, Peter's direct supervisor. Karen stared at the name. A gut instinct flared. This wasn't random. This wasn't some rogue prank. This was a power play. Late that night, Karen sat on her balcony, the stars veiled by the Portland haze, the weight of truth anchoring her in place. She sipped her fourth cup of black tea as the final pieces began to align. Someone had impersonated Naine. Someone had used an actress to frame her in a sexual scandal. And that someone had access to high-level resources inside the company where her husband worked. And now, Karen finally had a name. It wasn't just about breaking a marriage. It was about control. Cynthia Marshall had gone to war behind a polished desk. And Karen? She was ready to fight back, with a one-weapon Cynthia never counted on. The truth. Karen Roland's fingertips hovered above her keyboard, her monitor bathed in the ghostly blue light of a dozen open tabs. The name Ashley Stone blinked in the search bar. The photo enhancement software had done its job. Magnified facial markers, body contours, and even a faint, barely visible tattoo behind the actress's left shoulder blade had confirmed it. The woman in the photographs was not Naine French. But if not Naine, then who was she? Karen leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen rhythmically against her jaw. Whoever had orchestrated this scheme had gone to great lengths to mimic Naine's appearance. From hair color to posture to earrings, it had been meticulously choreographed. But a fake is still a fake. A message pinged at the bottom corner of her screen. Jules, encrypted line, got a partial name match through modeling forums. Actress, softcore lifestyle reels. Aliases include Ashley Stone/Aaron Sloan. Mostly off-grid now, but she did a couple of impersonation gigs a few years ago. Jules, found something better. Check this. A secure link appeared. Karen clicked. A grainy behind-the-scenes photo loaded. A woman, Ashley, standing outside what appeared to be a media production house. Beside her, in a cropped trench coat and sunglasses despite the cloudy sky, stood a tall woman with a commanding presence and a sharp bob of platinum blonde hair. Cynthia Marshall. Karen's breath hitched. Her fingers froze mid-keystroke. Cynthia was Peter French's boss, Executive Vice President of Development at Hippolyte Incorporated. The same woman who had hosted the company's holiday gala, where Karen had first noticed the strange glances between Peter and Naine. And now, here she was, in the background of a building that wasn't supposed to exist in this narrative. Karen immediately dialed Jules. "Tell me that isn't Photoshop," she said without preamble. "Nope," Jules replied with a low whistle. "That's a legitimate capture. Location is a shuttered studio in Vancouver. Used to do product commercials, now rents out to private contracts. Most of the records are scrubbed, but there was one gig filed under private branding visual assets. Booked 2 months ago. Under what name? A shell account. Orchid Content Solutions. No online presence. No employees. But guess who the payment came from?" Karen narrowed her eyes. "Don't tell me, Hippolyte?" "Bingo. Wired from a discretionary fund tied to Marshall's department. Buried in external consultancy. I cross-referenced the project code with their internal memos, and it's listed as a third-party vendor training video." "Yeah, right." Karen cursed under her breath. This whole thing was staged like a low-budget spy film. "Oh, it gets worse," Jules continued. "The pen from the hotel hallway, the one the guy supposedly said Naine dropped, I got a blurry shot from another angle. Same model, engraved. Used as a promotional gift by Hippolyte for their executive summit last year. Guess who signed the order?" Karen didn't need to guess. Cynthia Marshall. The pieces were clicking into place like a cruel puzzle. Karen stood and paced, adrenaline tightening in her chest. Cynthia had hired a body double, used corporate money, created a fake job to lure Naine away from home, planted fake evidence of infidelity, and then vanished the entire fake company overnight. All to sabotage a marriage. No, not sabotage. Control. Peter French had once been rumored to be transferring to a new division, one across the country in Boston. That move would have taken him out of Cynthia's orbit. But if his wife betrayed him, if he stayed broken and confused, he'd be ripe for manipulation. Vulnerable. Grateful to Cynthia for supporting him. Karen could now see the game, and the queen at the center of the board. She sat down and clicked her encrypted chat again. Karen, I need everything you can dig up on Cynthia. Personal email servers, internal memos, expense accounts, especially those linked to travel, consulting gigs, or payments to Orchid content. Jules, copy that. But you owe me Thai food. Extra spicy. Karen half smiled, then turned toward her notebook. She needed to plan her next move carefully. The trap was deeper than she'd imagined, but she had found the thread. And now, she was going to unravel it. One stitch at a time. Karen Roland sat in her dimly lit office, the rain tapping insistently against the window like a whisper trying to be heard. The overhead light buzzed softly, casting a faint halo over the wall of case files behind her. On her desk, the growing mountain of evidence lay spread out like pieces of a puzzle she was finally beginning to see clearly. She took a long sip from her coffee mug, black, no sugar, and tapped her pen against her notebook. Every instinct in her body told her they were close. Closer than ever. One name, one face kept circling back like a shadow in the fog. Cynthia Marshall. Cynthia had a reputation that preceded her. A woman polished to perfection, always dressed in tailored power suits. Her platinum blonde bob immovable under any scrutiny. Publicly, she was lauded as the sharp, visionary VP of development at Hippolyte Industries, Peter French's employer. Privately, whispers of manipulation, subtle threats, and untraceable vendettas painted a far more sinister picture. Karen leaned back in her chair and flipped open a folder labeled C. Marshall, personal. Inside were clippings, discreet surveillance photos, and testimonials from ex-employees who all carried the same undertone: fear. She clicked play on a recording Jules had extracted from a recovered hard drive, a snippet of a voice message that had been deleted but not permanently erased. The voice was unmistakable, crisp, calm, and cruel. If Peter leaves, everything falls apart. He's too valuable to be distracted by sentimentality. Handle it. Handle it. Karen closed her eyes and let the words sink in. This wasn't about jealousy. This wasn't even about love. It was about control. Earlier that day, Karen had met with Jules, her trusted hacker and digital forensics genius, at a small underground cafe where the scent of roasted beans mixed with machine oil from the espresso maker. Jules wore a hoodie despite the spring warmth, and his fingers flew across his laptop keyboard like a pianist preparing for a crescendo. I backtraced the email that booked the actress, Ashley Stone, he said, barely looking up. The original came from a spoofed email, masked under a fake HR consultancy firm. But the IP. He turned the laptop to face her. Hippolyte HQ. Karen's heart skipped. Which office? Corner of the executive wing. Guess who works there? He smirked. Cynthia, of course. But the real crack in the facade came when Karen received a message from a nervous insider at Hippolyte, a young HR associate named Travis, who had seen something that didn't sit right. They met in a parked car under the cover of night, Travis fidgeting nervously, eyes darting at every passing headlight. I saw the expense report, he whispered. There was a payout. Not huge, but strange. A consulting fee issued through a shell vendor, Grayline Services. I traced it back. Guess who runs Grayline? He handed over a manila envelope. Inside were incorporation documents. Fake names, hidden addresses, but the connections were there. The sole signatory for Grayline Services? Dory Sims. The same Dory Sims who had hired Naine. The same woman who vanished the day Naine tried to visit the office. It was now undeniable. Cynthia Marshall had created an elaborate ghost company, hired an actress to impersonate Naine, orchestrated the photo setup, and fed the images to Peter under the guise of concerned spouse from the other man's wife. A web of deceit so complex it could only be born from obsession and precision. But why? Karen dug further into the past and discovered the root. 2 years ago, Cynthia had mentored Peter, groomed him not just professionally, but personally. The promotion he received wasn't just based on merit. It was because Cynthia had fast-tracked him through a web of favors, internal endorsements, and power plays. She saw him not as an employee, but as a creation, hers. When Peter announced he and Naine were planning to move to Boston, closer to Naine's family, Cynthia lost her grip. All that investment, all that control, threatened by a woman she deemed inferior, unambitious, disposable. Karen jotted a single line in her notebook. If she can't control him, no one can. As the storm outside intensified, Karen stared out the window and realized something. Cynthia didn't just want to end Peter's marriage. She wanted ownership. Naine had unknowingly stood in the way of an emotional parasite who saw love as weakness and loyalty as leverage. Karen clenched her jaw. Naine wasn't just a victim. She was collateral damage in Cynthia Marshall's campaign to keep Peter under her thumb. But no longer. Karen closed the folder, rose from her chair, and grabbed her coat. There was still one piece missing. It was time to meet Peter, and time to let him see the monster behind the mask. Karen Roland parked her silver Prius 3 blocks away from the glossy corporate fortress that housed Hippolyte Industries. The glass tower shimmered under Portland's late afternoon sky, sleek and impenetrable, just like its senior leadership. She grabbed her manila folder from the passenger seat, flipped it open one last time to review the contents, and drew a deep breath. Inside were truths sharp enough to cut through the deepest lies, and she was about to hand them to the man who needed them most. Peter French. She didn't know if he'd accept them. She didn't know if he deserved to. But she did know this. Naine deserved her name back. And the only way forward was through fire. The lobby of Hippolyte was all marble, chrome, and quiet intimidation. Karen's boots echoed softly as she approached the front desk. The receptionist didn't look up. Karen Roland. I have a 4:30 with Peter French, she said evenly. The woman blinked once, typed, and nodded. He's waiting. 42nd floor. Left out of the elevator. 42 floors later, Karen stepped into a hallway bathed in the cool hum of recessed lighting. Peter's office was at the end. She knocked once. Come in, came a voice, flat and controlled, the kind that belonged to a man trying not to break. Peter sat behind a minimalist desk, no clutter, no family photos. His eyes were bloodshot, but his shirt was still crisply ironed, his tie military tight. A man who'd kept up the illusion of stability. Karen closed the door behind her and sat opposite him. No handshakes, no small talk. I told myself I wouldn't come here, she said, placing the folder gently on his desk. But your wife, your real wife, deserves better than what she's been handed. Peter didn't move. She's been lying to me for months, he said after a moment. I have photos. I saw them with my own eyes. Karen opened the folder. And what if I told you those photos were staged? Hired actress, paid photographer, entire company, fake. Peter scoffed. That's absurd. Absurd, Karen echoed. Like this card. She slid the SIC business card toward him. Company doesn't exist. Never did. The Portland address was a ghost office. The phone line's dead. Website server was traced to Ukraine. Peter frowned. His jaw tightened. She told me her job was real. I'm sure she believed it was, Karen said, because it looked real. She received paychecks. She traveled. She submitted reports. It was a perfect smokescreen until it vanished overnight. He looked at her now, really looked. Then who? Who would go through the trouble of inventing a company, hiring a lookalike, staging photos? Karen leaned forward. Someone who wanted her out of the picture. Someone who didn't care about destroying her reputation as long as she was gone. Someone with access to actors, money, and the ability to manipulate a senior employee at Hippolyte. Peter's hands gripped the edge of his desk. You're saying someone here? Karen nodded once. Your boss. Cynthia Marshall. Peter's laugh was dry, wounded. That's ridiculous. She's mentored me. She promoted me. She isolated you, Karen said. She made sure you were traveling more, staying late more, trusting her more. She needed you under her, professionally and emotionally. Peter stood up and walked to the window, arms crossed. Even if she was that manipulative, why would she do this? Karen opened the final photo in the folder, grainy, black and white, enhanced for clarity. It showed Cynthia standing outside a private film studio in Vancouver, speaking to a woman who looked exactly like Naine's doppelganger. The timestamp matched the week before the photos were sent. This woman is an actress, goes by Ashley Stone. She was hired under an alias and paid in cash. We traced her bookings to a fake production company set up 4 months ago. That's the same studio where your wife's fake affair was filmed. Peter stared at the photo. His breathing was slow, deliberate, as if trying to hold back something primal. She framed Naine. Karen nodded. To keep you. To destroy anything that might pull you away from this place, from her. She saw your wife as a threat, and she removed the threat. Silence flooded the room. Karen could hear the distant hum of a copier down the hall. Peter turned back to face her. His face was ashen. She told me a woman sent her the photos. Some jealous wife. A lie, Karen said. There was no other wife. There was only Cynthia. His voice cracked slightly. She cried. She cried, Karen. She told me she still loved me and wanted to understand why I cheated. And you believed her, Karen said gently, because you never imagined she'd lie to you like that. Peter sank into his chair like a balloon deflating. He looked at the folder, at the evidence, at the truth he couldn't ignore. I ruined her. You can start to fix it, Karen said, if you're ready. His hand hovered over the folder. She won't want me back. Not after what I did. Karen stood. Maybe not. But that's not the point, is it? He looked up. The point is, Karen said, you gave your trust to someone who poisoned it. Now you have a chance to give the truth to someone who earned it. What she does with it is up to her. But what you do next, that's on you. She left the folder on his desk and walked out, leaving Peter French staring into the weight of everything he had to answer for. The elevator ascended slowly, its soft mechanical hum the only sound in the tight space. Peter French stood rigid, fists clenched at his sides, eyes fixed on the digital floor indicator like it was a countdown to impact. He barely noticed the lobby blur past as the car rose to the top floor of Hippolyte's headquarters. Floor 42, Cynthia Marshall's domain. The weight of the evidence Karen Roland had handed him pressed down on him like a millstone. The damning photos, the falsified company, the escort hired to look like Naine, his wife, all orchestrated with surgical precision. And he believed it. The realization burned in his chest. When the elevator doors whispered open, Peter stepped into the penthouse floor, where minimalism met power. Sleek black glass, polished chrome fixtures, and framed stock graphs on the wall gave it a cold, commanding aura. Cynthia's assistant glanced up in surprise, but didn't say a word. Peter didn't wait. He strode to the frosted glass doors of Cynthia's office and flung them open. She was seated at her desk, framed by the skyline of Portland's West Hills, fingers poised above her keyboard. As the doors swung inward, she looked up slowly, calm, collected, poised. Peter, she said smoothly, as if his sudden appearance were a scheduled appointment. You look distressed. He stepped inside, the doors hissing shut behind him. His jaw was tight, voice low and dangerous. You lied to me. A single eyebrow arched upward. That's a bold accusation. Sit down, please. I'm not here to sit. He walked forward, placing a manila envelope on her desk like it was radioactive. You want to explain this? Cynthia glanced at the envelope but didn't touch it. What is that supposed to be? Peter opened it himself. One by one, he pulled out photographic prints. The model impersonating Naine in the hotel bed, the doctored email headers from the fake job, the surveillance footage of Cynthia at the same studio where the escort had been filmed. Each one thudded softly against her sleek marble desk like a bullet being loaded into a chamber. I know everything. Cynthia, the actress, the fake company. You orchestrated all of it just to split us up. Cynthia didn't flinch. She looked at the photos, her lips tightening slightly, but the mask remained intact. Peter, her voice was smooth, almost pitying. You're smart. You know Naine was wrong for you. You were ready to move to Boston and start fresh, until she clung to you like an anchor. You don't get to make that decision, he shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. The sound echoed through the office, and for the first time, Cynthia blinked. Peter's voice cracked, emotion finally breaking through the rage. You stole something from me. Years of trust. My peace. You made me doubt the only person I ever truly loved. And what would you have done if I hadn't? She said, voice now low, sharp. Stayed in your little suburban prison? You belong here, Peter. You're brilliant. You're the future of this company, and I wasn't about to lose you because of some waitress with a Nordstrom budget and red hair. His eyes narrowed. Don't talk about her like that. Cynthia leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. You know she would have dragged you down. I freed you. Now you're exactly where you need to be. This was necessary. You call this necessary? He snapped, pulling out one last piece of evidence. The business card from Service Industry Consultants, the one that led nowhere, that bore her personal assistant's phone number. This was malicious. This was psychotic. There was silence for a beat too long. Then Cynthia stood slowly, circled her desk, and looked Peter in the eyes. Her expression was unreadable. You're emotional now, she said calmly. But one day you'll thank me. Peter stared at her, the last sliver of disbelief dying in his chest. This wasn't a woman who regretted anything. There was no guilt in her voice, no shame in her posture, only control. And he had given her all of it, piece by piece, over the past 2 years. Now he was ripping it back. Already filed a formal complaint with HR, he said. An independent investigation is coming. And Karen, he smirked at the slight flicker in her eyes at the name, has already handed everything to the press. You'll be burning your own career, Cynthia said, voice icy. Then so be it. He stepped back toward the door. But at least I'll know I didn't stay loyal to the devil. She said nothing as he left, the doors hissing closed behind him. Peter paused in the hallway, his breath shaky. But for the first time in weeks, clarity returned. Naine hadn't betrayed him. He had betrayed her. And now, it was time to make it right. The morning sky above Portland was a moody swirl of slate and silver, clouds hanging low like a secret not yet told. The air was damp, but there was the scent of change in it, like the moment just before rain breaks open and the world is washed clean. Naine stood at the tall bay window of her friend's apartment, overlooking the city she once saw as home but now felt foreign and fragile. The coffee in her hands had gone cold, untouched. She hadn't slept the night before, not really. Dreams gave way to memories, and memories bled into thoughts of Peter, his eyes so full of heartbreak and confusion the last time they met. It had been 3 days since the confrontation between Peter and Cynthia Marshall. 3 days since Karen showed Peter the truth. 3 days of waiting. A knock on the door broke the silence. Naine turned slowly, heart thumping. She wasn't expecting anyone. 1,000 possibilities crowded her thoughts in the split second it took her to cross the room. When she opened the door, her breath caught. Peter stood there. No suit, no polished shoes, just jeans and a gray hoodie, soaked from the morning drizzle. His face was pale, his dark hair disheveled, eyes rimmed red like he hadn't slept either. "Hi," he said softly, the word barely audible. Naine didn't speak. She stepped back, giving him room, though her fingers clenched the edge of the door like a shield. Peter stepped in. The silence between them was thick, unbreathable. He stood there, soaked and small, like a man finally stripped of all illusions. "I was wrong," he said, voice cracking. "So wrong." Naine watched him, unsure if this was the moment she'd longed for or dreaded. "I should have trusted you. I should have fought for you instead of against you. But I believed her, Naine. I believed Cynthia, and I let her put poison in my head." Naine's voice was a whisper. You didn't just believe her. You handed me divorce papers. You gave up on me. I know. He looked at her with eyes hollowed by guilt. I looked at those pictures and saw what I wanted to see, proof that everything going wrong in my life wasn't my fault. I was too proud to admit I was being manipulated. Why are you here, Peter? He took a deep breath, as if what he was about to say would either save or destroy him. Because I want to make it right. Because I talked to the company's ethics board. I showed them everything Karen found, emails, surveillance, the link to that escort. Cynthia's being removed. Officially. Permanently. Naine blinked, stunned. Wait, you filed a complaint? I did more than that. Peter reached into his bag and pulled out a small folder, handing it to her. Inside was an official copy of a written statement, notarized with his signature. A formal retraction of the divorce claim, along with a public acknowledgement of the fraudulent setup and Naine's innocence. Naine read it with trembling hands. Her name, her reputation, cleared. I'm retracting everything, Peter said, voice low. The court will be notified Monday morning. The photos have already been flagged for manipulation. Karen's evidence, it's airtight. 1,000 emotions stormed through Naine. Relief, anger, vindication, and an ache that sat too deep for words. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, Peter said, his voice raw. But I need you to know this. I love you. I never stopped. And I was a damn fool for letting her do this to us. Naine stepped back, folding her arms, her spine straightening like armor being donned. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, she said. What happened? It broke something. But thank you for finally seeing the truth. Peter nodded, swallowing hard. If there's even a sliver of a chance, I'll wait. For as long as it takes. There was silence again. But this time it wasn't cruel. It was a pause full of meaning, full of air between two people on the edge of either reconciliation or ruin. Naine walked over to the kitchen counter and set down the folder. There's a lot we need to fix, she said. And not just between us. Cynthia, she hurt other people too. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again. Peter nodded. I'm ready. Naine gave him a long look. Good, because if we're doing this, we do it together. From now on, I don't want loyalty. I want truth. Peter stepped closer. Truth, then, from this day forward. And in that moment, the fog that had hung between them for weeks began to clear. There was no fairy tale reunion, no passionate kiss. Just two broken people willing to face the wreckage they'd barely survived and rebuild something new. Outside, the first rays of sunlight pierced the clouds. Rain drizzled over Portland like a quiet confession, soft, steady, and relentless. The city breathed fog and wet asphalt, its pulse thumping beneath layers of gray clouds and rustling umbrellas. Inside Hippolyte's sleek glass tower downtown, the temperature was colder and the air was thick with tension. Karen Roland had seen this before, the storm before the reckoning. She stood in the lobby of Hippolyte, dressed sharply in a charcoal blazer and black trousers, her hair neatly pinned and eyes calm but alert. Beside her stood Peter French, wringing his hands slightly, his jaw locked tight. He looked pale, like someone walking into their own funeral. It's not too late to turn around, Karen said quietly, not out of doubt but duty. Peter didn't flinch. She needs to answer for what she did. To Naine, to me, to everything I almost destroyed. Karen gave a slight nod, then led him toward the elevator. Up on the 20th floor, Cynthia Marshall's corner office loomed like a throne room. The door was open, the shades down, and her secretary, a skittish young woman with too much eyeliner, barely looked up as they passed. Cynthia herself sat behind a minimalist glass desk, surrounded by awards, diplomas, and modern art that screamed curated power. She glanced up, and her lips curled, not in surprise, but in irritation. Peter, she said, feigning warmth. And, oh, Miss Roland, still playing detective. Karen smiled politely. Only when there's something rotten to find. Peter stepped forward. We know what you did. The fake job. The photos. The actress. You framed Naine. Cynthia's eyes narrowed, but she didn't blink. Be very careful what you accuse me of, Peter. Karen placed a thin manila folder on the desk. Inside, you'll find copies of emails recovered from a wiped Gmail account tied to your department's secure IP address. Emails sent to an escort agency under the alias Ashley Stone. Included are high-resolution stills from a video shoot at a private studio you funded using discretionary marketing dollars. Peter opened his mouth to speak again, but Karen raised a hand. There's more. We also recovered metadata from the so-called hotel photos, taken not from an anonymous third party, but from a security contractor who's done work for Hippolyte's private events. You authorized the payment. And one more thing. She pulled out a USB drive, a copy of the actress's confession. She had no idea she was being used to destroy someone's marriage. Cynthia sat very still. I suggest you speak to HR before we do, Karen added, her voice suddenly hard. This is your opportunity to walk away quietly. Cynthia's silence cracked, just for a second. Her fingers twitched. She laughed softly, coldly. And what do you want? A public flogging? Peter's voice cut through the tension. No, I want you gone. Out of my life. Out of the company. I want the people you hurt to know what you are. Cynthia slowly stood. This company needs people like me, Peter. Builders. Strategists. Visionaries. Not wives with hurt feelings. Karen's eyes flashed. Funny. You call it strategy. I call it sociopathy. There was a long beat of silence, broken only by the sound of the elevator dinging at the end of the hall. As if on cue, two members of Hippolyte's internal compliance team entered the room. One of them, a tall man with an FBI agent's or presence, held up a badge. MS. Marshall, you're being placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation and legal review of your conduct. We ask that you come with us now. For the first time, Cynthia looked unsettled. Her nostrils flared, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Peter stepped back. Karen watched her with the detached empathy of someone who had seen the powerful unravel before. It was always the same. They never saw it coming. They never thought it could touch them. As the compliance officers escorted Cynthia away, Peter turned to Karen. I didn't expect it to feel like this, he said. Like what? Karen asked. Empty. I thought I'd feel triumph. Vindicated. Karen rested a hand on his shoulder. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the sound of the truth finally breathing. Later that day, Karen met Naine at a small cafe near the river. She told her everything. How Cynthia had been exposed, how Peter had confronted her, how the company was issuing a statement and preparing legal action. Naine sat in stunned silence, a slow tear trailing down one cheek, not from sadness, but from sheer relief. Will Peter be okay? She asked finally. Karen looked out the window, watching the way the rain streaked across the glass like ink. He will. So will you. But take your time. You both have scars to reckon with. Naine smiled faintly. Thank you. You believed me when no one else would. Karen shook her head. I didn't believe you. I listened. There's a difference. You gave me the truth. I just helped it find the light. Outside, the clouds began to part, ever so slightly, as if the truth itself had torn through the sky. The rain was falling in slow, mournful drops, streaking the windows of Naine's new apartment like tears. Portland's overcast skies had always made her feel melancholic, but today they seemed fitting, soft enough to soothe, heavy enough to remind her of everything she'd lost and everything she'd reclaimed. She stood barefoot by the window, a mug of herbal tea warming her hands, staring out at the wet pavement glistening under streetlights. Below, people rushed by with umbrellas and raincoats, lives in motion. For a long time, hers hadn't been. But now, the silence in her apartment wasn't suffocating. It was peace. A knock at the door stirred her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Karen Roland, umbrella in hand, trench coat soaked but expression radiant. Thought I'd stop by, Karen said with a soft smile. You weren't answering your phone. Naine stepped aside and let her in. I was just thinking, reflecting, healing. Karen nodded and handed her a folded newspaper. the front page already spotted with rain. Naine unfolded it. Top executive Cynthia Marshall fired over manipulation and misconduct scandal. Private investigation uncovers explosive plot to destroy an employee's marriage. Beneath the headline was a cropped photo of Cynthia, scowling and exiting the Hippolyte headquarters under a swarm of reporters. "She's finished," Karen said. "Corporate watchdogs are circling. She might even face charges for identity fraud and workplace harassment, not to mention civil suits." Peter's testimony helped a lot. Naine read the article slowly, each word like a stitch sewing her heart back together. She'd been doubted, accused, discarded, and now the world knew the truth. Her truth. "I didn't think this would ever happen," Naine whispered. "Not just the justice part, but the clarity, the strength." Karen raised her cup to surviving lies and making them irrelevant. They sat on the couch, steam from their mugs curling in the air between them. For a while, they didn't speak. They didn't need to. Finally, Naine said, "Peter asked me to dinner tomorrow." Karen arched a brow. "That's something." Naine gave a small, bitter laugh. "I told him I'd think about it. He's sorry. I can see it in his eyes. I think he really believed those photos. Believed I was capable of betraying him. And now he knows better. But part of me wonders, should I forgive him for not fighting harder for me?" Karen didn't answer right away. She leaned back and watched the shadows flicker on the ceiling. "Forgiveness isn't for them," she said finally. "It's for you. You don't have to let him back in. But you can let go of the pain he left behind." Naine nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about what comes next. I started sketching ideas for a consulting business. Real restaurant consulting. One that empowers small businesses, not one that's fake. Like SIC." Naine smiled. "Exactly. Maybe I'll call it Red Phoenix Consulting. Rising from the ashes and all that." Karen laughed. Fitting. Especially since the woman in the fake photos was a redhead. Naine's laughter joined hers, bright and genuine. It felt good to laugh again. Outside, the rain was thinning, the clouds parting to reveal a sliver of pale evening sky. As Karen stood to leave, she looked back at Naine with admiration. "You were strong, not just for enduring, but for standing up when everything felt rigged against you." Naine followed her to the door. "Thank you, Karen. You didn't just save my reputation. You gave me the chance to be me again." Karen tilted her head. "No, you did that. I just shined a light into the shadows." As the door closed behind her, Naine turned back to the living room and stood for a moment in the quiet. Then she walked over to her desk, opened her laptop, and typed a name into the blank space of a new website. Red Phoenix Consulting. Rising from ashes. Built on truth. A new beginning.